Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. Welcome to the last quarantine Q&A with Dr. O. Today is the 27th of May 2020, and I hope whether you are listening to it now live or whether you are listening to the recording later on, I hope that you've managed to keep safe yourself and your loved ones as we now step into this new world of post-COVID-19 lockdowns. I'm going to begin the session slightly different today because I've had a very busy week and I completely forgot to send the usual email with the hyperlink to this session, the live session. Now, I did mention during and at the end of the previous session that the live event is always available on the YouTube channel. Therefore, even if I didn't send the link, go to the channel and connect there. But, I know we're all busy and we tend to forget things. So I'm not expecting many people to tune in today, but we're doing it anyway. I committed to delivering it. So even if I'm just speaking to myself, even though it looks like we have 3 people, okay, wonderful, we're doing it anyway. Last session in the series, the format is always the same. I'm going to tell you a little bit about an introduction. We're going to do a little bit of a centering exercise, and then we delve into the Q&A/talking experience. Hello, Eleonora. And the introduction about the quarantine Q&A is very simple. This started about 2 months ago when quarantines were popping up left, right, and center. Lockdowns were popping up left, right, and center around the world. And the pressure of such experiences was beginning to be felt. And while I continued to do my work with clients online, there was a feeling that a lot of themes were coming up, a lot of suffering was being experienced, and maybe there was more I could do. And so from a desire to provide support, relief to some of the questions that were weighing some people down, I decided to launch this series, and I think now is the 6th or 7th event we do. And as we are stepping into post-lockdown life in many countries, the lockdown having already finished, here in Singapore in a week or so, I think it's time to bring this to a close as well. So that's the reason why this came about. And in all of the sessions we've done so far, we also took a moment to center ourselves as an opportunity to enter the session in as present a way as we can. And so we did some meditation-like exercise, we did some breathing-like exercise, various types. Today I'd like to do another breathing exercise where we get to be a little bit playful. And the idea is that for 3 minutes, I will put it on the timer here, we will take a deep breath, filling our lungs as much as we can, but without forcing it, as if, it feels like it's exploding. And on the breath out, we make sounds. Any sound, any type, as long as possible until the breath ends. And then when that's done, we take another deep breath and we continue making sounds. So just to give you a sense of what that might look like, you're going to sit down, lie down. I'm not sure exactly where you are, but make yourself comfortable. Take a deep breath and then, be playful. playful, be silly, don't worry about sounding crazy. Be with yourself and with your breath. Oh. Breath finished. Take another deep breath. Oh, you can keep the note, or you can do vocalization. Do whatever you want. You can sing a song. The point is, keep it going as long as possible until the breath is out, and then take another breath. And then when the 3 minutes sounds, we'll stop. Okay? Enjoy being silly. I'll put you on mute to spare you the singing voice, and the 3 minutes begin now. Okay, the 3 minutes are up. I hope you enjoyed the exercise. It's a fun exercise, and it has an incredible amount of benefits. Number one, the fact that you are being playful, if you are able to allow yourself to make the sound. Some people find it difficult to vocalize. It loosens you up. Number two, as you would have heard perhaps from my previous sessions, when you make a purposeful long exhale, you are activating the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of the nervous system that slows everything down. And therefore, it creates that positive response to what otherwise would be stress. And so it slows your system down. And number three, or number four, I forgot how many I counted. You might have experienced situations when you get angry, sad, upset, some kind of emotion is coming up, and you feel like a knot, weight here in your solar plexus, or maybe in the belly, or sometimes close to your throat. And it feels like there's a blockage somewhere in this line of in this channel. And doing vocalization is a way of shaking, is vibrating the system. And sometimes it has the opportunity to dislodge some of those blockages. And in fact, you might find that emotions come up. Some tears might come up, maybe a scream might come up, maybe some words might come up. But it's a nice way of, allowing it to let go. So, introduction completed, the little centering exercise completed. As always, I will wait for questions if any come up. In the meantime, I'll probably delve into a topic that has come up during the week. And it's the question around dealing with loneliness, especially in the context of the lockdown. But I decided that maybe it'd be good to speak about the topic in a little more broader sense, and see where that takes us in relation to COVID, the lockdowns, and re-entering the world as we knew it. So, the meaning of the word loneliness, the etymology of the word creates the idea of being alone, of being without companionship, of being disconnected from others. So somewhat of a physical state kind of description of things, which is kind of very easy to understand and relatively intuitively easy to correlate to COVID-19 and the lockdowns, because many of us have experienced what we would call social isolation. And so, by the definition, being away from companionship and others. However, in the context of mental health and perhaps more broadly, loneliness is not really described as a physical state of isolation, but as a state of mind. And I think you can relate to this when you consider that in modern life, in particular, we often are not alone. We might be in a busy office environment. We might be in an office space. I said office already, in a bar or restaurant. We might be in the company of people in a social club. We might be in the company of friends and connections online. So we might be surrounded by people and connection, and yet we might still feel lonely. So in the context of what I want to share with you, loneliness, as I define it, is a state of mind that makes you feel somewhat empty, disconnected from the world and others, and unwanted from the world and others. Now, loneliness is a very common experience that we all have, and at one point or another of our life, pretty much all of us, I wouldn't put a number on it, but a great number of us would have experienced loneliness one way or another. The reason for that is because often loneliness is the product of situations that we encounter that fairly naturally would create a similar state of mind. So imagine, for example, that you've just landed a beautiful job, and this job is in a different country. And so you relocate, and whether you relocate with family or alone, but you relocate to a new environment, and all of a sudden the novelty of everything around you, and often the lack of social connections that you have outside what's familiar to you. Again, if you are with family, or otherwise maybe the office or the environment of the office, it is possible to not have the same feeling of connection and alignment with the environment and the people where of the place you come from. Another example could be the departure of a loved one and the feelings that usually might arise, including grief, of course, might get us to feel sense of disconnection and loneliness that I'm describing. In some occasions, it's not a situational experience, but it's one that we carry with ourselves wherever we go. And so, whether we are indeed surrounded by friends and family and others or not, we might carry a sense of low self esteem, a desire to be with others, but a belief, unhealthy at that we are not worthy of people's attention, care, and love, and that if we were to make demands or express our needs for time and attention from these loved ones, then we effectively would be a burden for them. And so we keep away from asking in everyday situation, and sometimes even worse in moments of need, where we might be experiencing some degree of struggle, a sickness, or a fear of some sort, and where connecting with someone we trust would be useful, but we don't do it. It's very common, again, whether it's situational or intrinsic to the way we see ourselves in the world. Now, the reason I'm highlighting it is because the topic of loneliness has been very prominent in this last few months, to do with the social isolation that came from the lockdowns, COVID-19, and it's important that we take it seriously. The impact of loneliness on one's life are well documented and actually quite severe. And so living a life that has a fairly prevalent feeling of being empty, unwanted, disconnected, being undesirable, or whatever the version could be, has been documented as having objectively measurable impacts on our health, including our physical health. And so, for example, there have been studies that have correlated loneliness to Alzheimer's. There have been studies that have correlated loneliness to depression and anxiety. Studies that have correlated loneliness to cardiovascular diseases. Studies that have correlated loneliness to a negatively impacted response in the body to inflammation. And as you probably know, many of the illnesses that we suffer are a result of inflammation in the body. And as I might have mentioned previously, or if you didn't know, I'll tell you now, the Wim Hof method and the breathing method in particular within it has been documented scientifically as a very strong tool to address inflammation in the body, including autoimmune disorders, which are inflammation-based disorders. So loneliness has been linked to a wide range of physical ailments. Oh, and actually, just remember one more study. I believe it was a collective review of many studies on loneliness, which we usually call a meta-analysis. So an analysis of the analysis that concluded the 2010, I think it was, and that loneliness in someone's life in a persistent manner can shorten one's life in the equivalent amount of someone that smokes like 10 to 15 cigarettes a day, something like that. but something quite significant in the way it was presented and impactful in the way it affects us. So a common condition, one that has definitely been exacerbated during the COVID pandemic, one that has very severe severe impacts on our health, and the good news, one that we can definitely do a lot about, regardless of the type of causes of your loneliness. Again, situational, or perhaps more, or perhaps deeper within your psyche. Doesn't matter, we can do something about it. And so hopefully a couple of the pointers I'll share next can help you in that direction. One final point I would make on the importance of the relationship that we use in battling, for lack of better words, loneliness is another study. So in the 1930s, Harvard University started a study to basically assess what variables would likely predict someone's happiness and well-being over a longer period of time. And so they approached a bunch of students at the university, I think 200 something to begin with. And they started asking them a bunch of questions, as well as testing them on a variety of things, of a variety of dimensions. And what they found out is that the people who were happier, healthier, and indeed alive after a long period of time were not the people with money, were not the people with great careers and accolades and achievements, but were the people with significant relationships. Now, this is a very important finding because the study in question, which I think was called the Study of Adult Development, is a study that has been going on for, hold on tight, 80 years, 80. Over the 80 years, the study has developed. The people who were originally involved have continued up into their silver years. Their children, their relatives, and others have joined the study, which eventually grew to be 700-800 people. And as I say, on an ongoing monitoring process, which again has also evolved over the years, for 80 years. So the amount of data this study has provided is second to none, is the dream of any social scientist wanting to study human behavior and the impact that various variables have on us and our ability to predict success. And one of the questions that was included in such studies and questionnaires, which was a very interesting way of summarizing the impact of relationship, was a question in the questionnaire that went something along the lines of, who would you call in the middle of the night if you were sick or scared? Something like that. And interestingly, the people who were in the lower end of the scale, who answered nobody, or yeah, maybe this or that other person, but without a real sense of trust and significance in that relationship, were also correlated to being the people who had the least healthy relationships, and therefore later on in life were shown to be the least happy, healthy. Perhaps they were among the people who had died before the rest of the cohort. So a pretty powerful set of studies, and this is just one snippet of information. The amount of data from that study is enormous to articulate that the answer to loneliness, which is to create healthy relationships, is amply demonstrated as a powerful tool to long-term successful relationships, health, wealth, even life. I forgot the sentence I was saying, so I'll leave it at that. Relationships are a key antidote to loneliness, and the positive impact of a healthy relationship has been amply demonstrated. So, moving forward, therefore, whether you are coming from a situation in COVID where you've been alone for 2 months because you live alone and you've had social interaction through Zoom or Skype or whatever other channels that are available today, great. Whether you've had no interaction whatsoever because for whatever reason your life circumstances don't require them and you were able to work silently behind your keyboard via email and you never had to talk to anyone on video call or on the phone. Or at the other end of the spectrum, whether we're coming out of COVID with a family in tow, we've had lots and lots of time together, maybe too much time together, so much so that we never had alone time, me time. You might have experienced a sense of loneliness. And so, my recommendation moving forward, as again lockdowns begin to finish and we are starting to go back to a certain kind of normality, especially when it comes to literally having social interaction on a face to face basis, is to be mindful and present to the need for healthy relationships. And please remember that by healthy relationship, I am not referring to 1,000 connections on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever, followers on the YouTube channel or X number of likes on photographs I posted yesterday. I'm talking about a handful. Could be one, actually, could be two, could be five, but a handful of genuinely healthy, strong relationships. These are relationships where we feel okay to be ourselves, where we feel open to being authentic, authentic with our needs, authentic with our emotions, authentic with our being, whatever it is. So let's reconnect to the world. Let's rejoin social interactions, mindful of the importance of nurturing, and if you don't have, building healthy relationships. Thanks for entertaining me all this while. I can see that there's no questions yet. I'll wait for maybe a few minutes to see if anybody is online and wishing to ask a question. And if not, that's okay too. We'll close the call and let it be where it is. Okay, it looks like there's no questions coming today. Oh, I wrote one. None came up. Can you write it again? I can wait. I'll just wait a few moments for the question that's coming up, and yeah, and then we'll probably close. Yeah, okay, I can wait. We're just waiting for a question to be typed up, and it looks like one was typed up earlier, but it didn't show up in the chat. And so now it's being written again, and I'm waiting for it to pop up and address it as necessary. I guess it should be coming up anytime soon. I suppose it must be a long question. Here we go. At last, we are in the second phase, and instead of feeling joy, I'm worried that the life will not be the same. Maybe it isn't all negative, but not knowing. Well, there's definitely going to be uncertainty moving forward. Um, if I give you an example from my perspective, I know that in Singapore, starting June the 2nd, the circuit breaker measures will be lifted, but we don't know to which degree. There will still be restrictions, obviously and understandably, to make sure that the pandemic is kept at bay and the numbers are monitored as we slowly go back to having a fully open life. But I actually have no idea yet of the details of what restrictions we might have in relation to my work, for example. And so there's these question marks that we all have in our heads and hearts in relation to, okay, what next? Can I do this? Can I do that? Can I go see my friends? Can I meet my partner again who I haven't seen? Can I see my clients? Can I interact with suppliers? I don't know. We all have a lot of questions that I'm sure create and have created uncertainty, with which very often comes a degree of anxiety. So I'm not surprised that there's a worry there that life will not be the same, because it's likely to not be the same at all, certainly not to begin with. In the same way in which we've had to adjust to the lockdown and to living life away from, social interactions of all sorts. And that took a lot of effort, I'm sure, for everybody to adapt to, some more than others, but a lot of effort nevertheless. The same goes with going back to the new normal. And so I understand the worry. I think it's to do with the idea that there's a lot of uncertainty, and perhaps accepting that slowly things will become more familiar and hopefully, therefore, the anxiety might lower, and then the sense of worry might disappear. What to expect causes me anxiety. Oh, yeah, there you go. So, anxiety, and I know there is still a threat, but where is the danger? How can I feel safe? Oh, yes, that's very important too. Because obviously, as we begin to reconnect with people, nobody knows who the carriers are going to be. We know, for example, from the way the Singapore government has been communicating with us, that there are indeed cases out there that have not been picked up because they just don't have the symptoms to alert themselves to be tested. And so they might be people who are silently connecting with others and passing the virus on without knowing it. And I think the other worry that might be present in people is the idea that if someone has had COVID, would I possibly catch it from them, even if they've recovered? So it's understandable that it's going to be excuse me. It's understandable that it'll take time to adjust to this. Thankfully, the government is warning everybody to maintain social distancing, to maintain good personal hygiene, to wear a mask when interacting with others, which hopefully should help you with feeling safe as you are asking. But of course, there are no guarantees. And therefore, keeping a watchful eye and being respectful of your boundary and other people's boundaries might be another way of going about it. There was another question that was asked in last week's session where I reminded people that if you are not comfortable, for example, with someone naturally coming to hug you or shake your hand, it'd be perfectly okay to say, "I'm sorry, but I would prefer to keep social distance. So I will. I would prefer not to have physical contact." Just being mindful and respectful of boundaries, yours and others, and finally keeping aware of the social distancing, hygiene, and wearing the mask rules, I think would be the best tools we have at our disposal to be safe as much as we can be safe. And finally, if that still doesn't help, the staying at home invite still applies. And unless absolutely necessary to go out, it's perfectly okay to still stay at home and take time. Keep a monitoring eye on the way that the situation is developing, and when you feel comfortable, yeah, you can go out. Until that time, perhaps that's another way of addressing it. Okay, I can see some more comments about the fact that the questions did come up. Yeah, they were typed in later. Are there any other questions? Otherwise, we can bring this to a close. Okay, I think I'll take this as an opportunity to wrap it all up. And I wish to thank all of those who have participated over the weeks. I wish to thank the participant who joined me today. And if you happen to see this as a recording and you were looking forward to attend this session and you didn't because you didn't see the link coming through my usual email, I do apologize. I completely forgot. I was so busy this week that it escaped my mind. But it is online. It's available for you to review anytime. And I hope if you're listening to this, it means that you have So thank you also for looking out for it and coming to hear it anyway. I wish you all well. I wish you all safe and all the best with moving forward through this new world we all live in and rejoining life with colleagues, friends, family members, loved ones, and so on. Thank you very much. Bye bye.